Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for joining me again for this live stream. I hope everyone's doing well. As usual, let's give ourselves just a minute to make sure everything's up and live and running before we begin our live stream tonight. I published a couple of videos really in the past few days. We didn't have a live stream for 2 days. And today I have one more video coming out. Lots of things to do with Lebanon, but very interesting developments from Gaza as well. Now, for those of you who are new, I usually do these live streams as an extended version of the topics that we cover. I obviously have the shorter videos for all of you who prefer to have shorter videos with updates, very short and brief updates. I do this for you, but obviously with the live stream, it's more extended, more in depth. So if you're more into short videos, go ahead and watch my shorter videos. If you have time on your hands, you can sit down and chill and listen and participate. Obviously, part of the reason that I have these live streams is for you to participate, to share your thoughts and views, and for you to have a platform as well. And again, thank you everyone who is joining and greeting, and welcome to another video. So a lot of talk obviously still about Lebanon. We've had Benjamin Netanyahu complaining to the Americans that he's not getting enough weapons. Now Yoav Gallant is there trying to clean up the mess as the defense minister. Is visiting AIPAC, is visiting the top figures in the US Army. Now, mind you, Yoav Gallant has a more extreme view when it comes to Lebanon, by the way. Don't think Benjamin Netanyahu is the worst person in Israel. He's not. And Israel as a country is the problem here, by the way, as an enabler. By the way, it never was about just Benjamin Netanyahu. It's about the country that enables him, which is the supremacist, genocidal, violent, racist state of Israel that was founded on Zionism, on hate, on ethnic cleansing, on this mass murder and expulsion of the Palestinian people. Benjamin Netanyahu is just an episode, and perhaps the last episode. However, when it comes to Lebanon, the man doesn't have the most extreme or worst type of view. Yoav Gallant is worse than him. Why is Yoav Gallant worse than him? Well, Yoav Gallant was the first person to threaten Lebanon. So back in November, he went to the Lebanese borders and he threatened the Lebanese people. He said, we warn the Lebanese civilians we can do to the citizens of Beirut what we did to the citizens of Gaza. Clearly hinting that these people target citizens, number one, and not the actual resistance. Secondly, this man is genocidal. He shares the same genocide intent like Benjamin Netanyahu and like the extremist figures, by the way, in Israel. All of that is not helping to convince the United States decision makers to support Israel fully in a war with Lebanon. Obviously, Israel tried that with Iran, and the US showed them, okay, we're willing to help when it comes to defense. And then Biden told Netanyahu, you've got the win, take the win. And the win to Joe Biden was we intercepted the majority of these missiles and drones that were sent from Iran, although Iran landed what they wanted to land and what they intended to land anyway. But obviously that was an excuse from Biden not to go further. And this is a change in US policy, by the way. And that change came with the higher leverage that started to be used and put in place by Iran throughout the years. And we will get to Iran and the deals that they have with the United States, by the way, behind Israel, because Israel obviously is tied with the United States, but the United States has deals with Iran. And I will get to that in a sec. So what I wanted to share with you today is the statement of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the US with regards to Lebanon. And that he's giving Nettie another cold shoulder. So we had this article in the Jerusalem Post. The Jerusalem Post had an article where they highlighted some of his comments, Charles Brown, and the implications. Joint Chiefs of Staff head Charles Q. Brown warned on Monday that the US may not be able to help defend Israel against an all-out war with Hezbollah in the same way that it stepped in during the Iran drone attack in April. And let's stop there for a second before we continue. Not be able to help defend Israel against an all-out war with Hezbollah in the same way that it stepped during the Iran drone attack. So the help here is restricted to self-defense. We're not even talking about attack. So he's saying we won't be able to even defend you the way we did with Iran, let alone attack. That's at least what we're understanding from the statements, by the way, and this is very important for people to understand. We're not talking about interference when it comes to joining Israel in attacking Lebanon. We're just talking about not helping them in even defense. Obviously, because of how close Hezbollah is to Israel, the shorter range missiles, the drones, all of that. It's very complicated. When it comes to that, and even Israel with all of its anti-aircraft systems, they have about 8 of them. They were unable to deter and stop the attacks of Hezbollah. And in particular, they have a big problem with the UAVs, but also against the missiles, especially because Hezbollah are taking down their air defense systems, their batteries, radars, actual systems themselves. And the last video that they published, Al-Hudhud video part 1, apparently only, episode 1, they showed them every single place where they have an anti-aircraft system, where they are. So it's not that they showed them an aerial view. They have intel on what's on the ground, Hezbollah. And we've been talking about the quality intel that they have from long before Hezbollah, and they constantly prove it day after day. I added that from myself, obviously, just to elaborate on the article for you to have an understanding. They continued. Brown, a U.S. Air Force general, also said that Iran, quote, would be more inclined to support Hezbollah. So the U.S. is worried about Iran also stepping in when it comes to Hezbollah, especially because of the land route and that they have direct support. While the Islamic Republic supports Hamas, General Brown said that Tehran would stand more firmly behind Hezbollah, quote, particularly if they felt that Hezbollah was being significantly threatened. Brown also said that any Israeli military offensive into Lebanon could risk triggering a broader war, putting U.S. forces in danger. In the event of war, Brown said that the U.S. would likely not be able to provide the same assistance as it did when Iran carried out a missile and drone attack on Israel earlier this year. He also said it was hard to fend off the shorter range rockets that Hezbollah fires across the border into Israel. He asserted that the safety of the U.S. forces was the priority and reiterated that no attacks had been carried out on U.S. bases in the region since February. Now, let me elaborate a little bit further here. In previous live streams, we've been talking about the fact that the U.S. takes into consideration their bases in the Middle East, not just only Israel. Israel is their little state, but they have bases in the Middle East, many bases, and many troops, and they have lots of interests apart from Israel. Israel, as a matter of fact, is the U.S.'s biggest liability, is the whole West's biggest liability. It puts the whole Western powers to shame because Israel is supposedly representing the Western values in the Middle East. And what are these values that are being supported by these Western powers, at least some of these Western powers? Genocide, slaughter, ethnic cleansing, racism, supremacy, all of the ugly things you can think about. So it's a liability. And Israel is almost forcing the US and Western powers to recognize that I am a liability on you. Please neglect me. Please get rid of me. Please take me down, right? I'm a liability. This is what Israel's doing now. Obviously, the US has a lot of troops in the Middle East, lots of bases. We've been talking about the fact that they have interests and they also have deals with Iran. This notion that their troops' safety is vital is very, very true. It's very true because they know how weak they are when it comes to Iran. It will be like a shooting range on ducks, by the way, if Iran starts to shooting at US bases in the Middle East. US troops will go down like ducks. No air defense system, no nothing will stop them. And the fact that he said that no attacks have been carried out on US bases since February. Why? Because they had a deal with Iran, clearly. The US has a deal with Iran. They had a deal in January, right? In joint collaboration, mediation from Oman, especially with regards to the bases, and in particular in Iraq, by the way. Iraq, also Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia was less intense because they already had a deal brokered by China between Iran and Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, Ansarullah as well. So it was more around Iraq because US bases in Iraq were getting a lot of hits and the US didn't want to increase that. They wanted to have damage limitation. Clearly there was a deal there, but that deal did not include continuing to attack Israel. It only said the basis. In return for what? Lifting off some of this US support. Now there's lots of talk in Israel already that the US, by stating this, is giving a backwind to Hezbollah in Iran. They're reading that, look, the US is saying, I'm not going to support you, therefore I'm going to increase my attacks on you. People in Israel are already saying that. The mere statements from the US that we will not support Israel or we won't support to the same level. And it's all defensive, by the way. Nothing is attack here. When it comes to Lebanon, because of their vulnerability when it comes to Iran, clearly there's a new equation. They added, Brown said that the US continued to warn Israel against going to war with Lebanon. Obviously, they've been warning on war with Lebanon. They warned before. They said, even if you go into war with Lebanon, you wouldn't be able to ensure that it doesn't spread out. And obviously, that's something that the United States does not want. Quote, think about the second order of effect of any type of operation into Lebanon and how that might play out and how it impacts not just the region, but how it impacts our forces in regions as well, quote, Brown reportedly said. Brown's comments came amid heightened expectations that the IDF may launch a military campaign in Lebanon to oust Hezbollah from the territory on Israel's border to stop its persistent attacks. Prime Minister Netanyahu told Channel 14 on Sunday night that Israel is open to a diplomatic resolution to the Hezbollah threat, but he stressed, quote, it must be on our terms. We will do what is necessary, he said. I can assure the citizens of Israel that if we are required to take on this challenge, we will do it. We can fight on several fronts. Come on. Is that a joke or what? And we are also preparing for it. Sorry, some things are just too funny, really. It must be on our terms, as if Israel can write terms and then we can fight on several fronts. You can't fight Hamas. Talk about fighting on several fronts. I hardly fight Hamas with flip-flops and Adidas trousers and T-shirts in Gaza, telling me going to fight on several fronts. Fight with what exactly? That was what I wanted to share with you. And how is that linked to the previous video that I published earlier on about Israeli Channel 12 quoting officials from Israel sending a message to the US administration that we will be using unconventional weapons in Lebanon. We will be using weapons we've never used before. Now, when I heard this, I went to check what weapons did Israel not use, right? using everything and white phosphorus, all sorts of stuff. And apart from white phosphorus, other illegal weapons, what haven't they used? The nuclear, biological, chemical. That's what they haven't used. So if they're telling the United States, we will be using weapons we haven't used before against Lebanon, you're talking about either nuclear or biological weapons or chemical weapons. And this reckless genocidal state is still enabled. You still have the US supporting, you still have the UK supporting, you still have some NATO members supporting as well, as if nothing happens. But poor little Hezbollah, even if they don't have evidence, having a couple of missiles in Al-Hariri airport, they have missiles in Al-Hariri airport. Although the Lebanese went and, well, mistake, even in my opinion, the Lebanese gathering everyone, look, check, we don't have anything here. Why do you have to prove anything? You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Any sovereign state is entitled to do whatever the hell they want to do, including bringing missiles and whatever you want anywhere. Who are these people? Who's the Daily Crapograph or whichever newspaper telling anyone, oh no, we found missiles in your airport? And haven't you found the nuclear bombs of Israel too? Seriously. And they went and they proved to everyone that we don't have them. Why is Israel telling that to the United States now? Israel is saying that to the United States to push them, to have more leverage. Listen, if you're not going to support us, we might do something even more reckless. So this is the leverage that Israel is using at the moment with the US, because nothing is working now. Nothing is working. Begging isn't working. Netanyahu claiming outright, they're delaying weapons, although they already declared that they're delaying weapons of the 1 ton and half a ton, 1,700, 250 kg bombs and 1,800, 1,000 kilogram bombs, or the opposite when it comes to the weight, but the same numbers, roughly 3,500 bombs, right? Because they know they land them on the heads of the children in this genocide, in this infanticide that's happening in Gaza, the mass murder of children. With this shocking report, 21,000 children now missing. Clearly, with all of that, they're not changing the position of the US. Why? Because the US is grabbed by who? By Iran. By Iran and by the movements that are aligned with Iran. There's a new equation, and Israel is irrelevant. It's becoming more and more irrelevant. It's a pariah state. It's a genocidal state. And the sooner these hypocrite Western powers that support Israel realize that this country is a liability on them more than anything else, the merrier. The later that they realize that, the more bloodshed and more devastation that they won't be protected from, by the way. Now, the US is trying to have some sort of damage control, but again, if Israel goes on this all-out war, you can have as many agreements with Iran as possible. So long as the US stays out of it, it can potentially go ahead without direct Iranian interference on US bases, by the way, but again, that's not guaranteed, because so far, all of these agreements that we had between Iran and the US, they were about Gaza. They weren't about Lebanon. We were talking about not escalating during this phase, during this intensity with Gaza, during this intensity with Lebanon. When you talk about an all-out war and you're talking about a movement at the scale of Hezbollah belonging directly to Iran, you're talking about a religious affiliation with Hezbollah. They're different than Hamas, by the way. Although Iran supports them unconditionally, but Hezbollah, their supreme leader is Ali Khamenei in Iran. It's a different level. Whereas Hamas is an independent movement. But Iran obviously still support them. But with Hezbollah, it's Iran. You're talking about Iran in Lebanon, and Iran will have different calculations when it comes to Hezbollah. And this is what I wanted to share with you. Let me see if you have any comments or questions here. If you wouldn't mind, if you have any questions, by the way, excuse me, just highlight them for me with a sign or a watermelon, like some of you are doing, so I can check them quickly. And greetings to everyone as well. I missed you too. Brother Abu Mahdi saying he missed me. I missed you too. I missed everyone as well. Where are we? First question is from Lizzie. Lizzie Lizard. If they declare that they will use unconventional weapons, do you think Hezbollah will strike first and strike big? Not necessarily. Because Hezbollah is obviously reading everything. And Hezbollah doesn't want to be viewed as the movement who starts the all-out war. You see, they've been very, very careful and very well calculated in this escalation. 3 to 5 kilometer radius, escalation to take as much exhaustion from the Israeli army and not allow them to fully do whatever they want in Gaza, and that has been effective. And they obviously don't want to be seen in Lebanon, because there are many people in Lebanon who repeat the same ignorant mantra. Oh, it's not us, Gaza, no. What does it do to the Lebanese people? We have a bad economy. As if, you know, every person in the Arab and Muslim world is in charge of himself. You know, you need to be selfish and entitled and think about yourself and not your next door neighbors going through a genocide and infanticide and a starvation and catastrophe. Doesn't work like that, right? Whereas Israel is getting all of the weapons from the US, all of the support. Some people in Lebanon say, oh, we need to support diplomatically. But anyway, not as if Hezbollah cares about these people, by the way. But they are considering the public opinion when it comes to Lebanon, definitely, especially because not everyone in Lebanon supports Hezbollah. And they've done that responsibly. They've escalated to a level where they don't push Israel for a massive response, target certain bases first, checkpoints. Israel started to escalate, they started to escalate. They're monitoring how many Israeli troops, Israeli equipment, everything is coming to Lebanon. They monitor. And Hezbollah Secretary General Nasrallah, in his first speech, he made statistics. Exactly, like 30% of the troops are here, 40% of that. And that was from the beginning. Now you're talking about almost half of the Israeli army is up there. The whole Division 36. Now they want to end Rafah to go to Lebanon, to have majority forces in Lebanon. So clearly what Hezbollah is doing is working, has worked. Unlike what these people with defeated mentalities, you know, see some people who, the non-believers, they're non-believers in terms of like they don't believe in anything that can be accomplished, you know. That's it. All of the powers in the US and in this little paper tiger Israel. And we only fight diplomatically. We cry and we beg. Right? They don't believe. And if you don't believe, you can't see anything. Fact of the matter is Hezbollah emptied the north. Hezbollah took exhausted most of the Israeli army now. Hezbollah created a new equation. Hezbollah destabilized Israel. Hezbollah forced out millions outside of Israel. Hezbollah forced hundreds of thousands of settlers outside of their homes. They demolished over 90% of certain settlements. They poked the eyes of all of Israel's systems up north, most of them. Iron Dome, whatever you have, anything. Roasted Dome now it is. So they created a new equation. And if Israel wasn't in Gaza, they would have had a devastating attack on Lebanon, by the way. But they can't go on a devastating attack in Lebanon when they are sinking in the sands of Gaza. And all of this talk, by the way, is just to show, not that they can't hit, they can hit, but really and truly, they're done from within. They're eaten. Hundreds of thousands of wounded. Last week, they had a report 70,000 disabled. Do you know what 70,000 disabled soldiers means? That means you have at least 20 to 30,000 killed, over 100,000 wounded, and hundreds of thousands with PTSD. What is that? That's the whole of Israel. The whole of the Israeli army. And does anyone think that they are capable of doing anything in their current state? It will be only something symbolic to show something to the bloodthirsty people in Israel who want more genocide. That's it, by the way. But they have to portray it, it's part of their existence, portray themselves as if they are a strong state or whatever, even though they are weaker than a spider's web. And Nasrallah himself told them that over 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that Israel is weaker than a spider's web. أوهن من بيت العنكبوت. And if you believe that, then you will witness it. But there are some people who believe, no, they're unbeatable. What can you do with these people? So I don't think they will start with the big escalation. And again, Israel might threaten, and they were threatened by all of most Western countries, Hezbollah already. Don't end it now from the beginning. Otherwise, you'll get a massive hit 8 months in. What happened? Don't forget, lots of it is psychological warfare against them too. And that was from Lizzie. And thank you so much, by the way, to anyone sending super thanks. I will get to you in a second, by the way. Just don't want to miss some of the questions, but I will get to each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Let me see. Zach is saying, question with Nasrallah is warning against Lebanon, their air bases, with Nasrallah warning against Cyprus participating in the war by providing their air bases. What do you think this warning means for other parties like Jordan? Well, obviously Cyprus is denying now. There have been rumors circulating about, the UK, one of the grandparents of terrorism across the world, having certain bases and allowing Israel. We know that the UK sent Israel lots of help when it comes to surveillance while they're committing a genocide, including at the time where British aid workers were killed. So Britain is taking a very ugly position, very hideous position, supporting this barbaric genocide. But to Hezbollah, even if it's the UK using these bases in Cyprus, it's coming from the southern Cyprus, right? Not the northern Cyprus. That belongs to or is linked with Turkey. Now, this means that they are under threat. Whether it's Cyprus, whether it's Britain operating from Cyprus, Hezbollah couldn't care less. If it's Britain, whoever it is, anyone supporting this genocidal state is a target to Hezbollah. Jordan, they already faced it. They already know, Jordan, that if anything is supporting Israel, anything going from that country to Lebanon, so in support for Israel, they're targeted. But you need to realize, though, what Jordan did before isn't something against that state. They translated it as a defense against our area, our airspace being invaded, and to protect the Jordanian people. So it's not like they conducted attacks from Jordan on Gaza or on Lebanon, right? It's a shameful position anyway, because they're not going to Jordan, and you're even threatening the Jordanian people by taking down missiles and UAVs over Jordan. Who in his right mind thinks that intercepting a missile that's not coming to you anyway, over the heads of your people is safety. And we saw some of them being intercepted and landing on people. So I don't think Jordan will have anything going to support Israel against Lebanon. I don't think so. But if they do, they know that they're exposed, and primarily by Iran. Don't forget they have many movements in Syria too that can target Jordan anyway. And Marvin Virgus, thank you so much for your excuse me, super thanks. Oms is saying, if a war with Lebanon turns regional, how likely will Syria and maybe Egypt get sucked in? Egypt would be the last country to get sucked in. Syria more likely because they have more involvement with Iran and Hezbollah, and they are a key area where all of this is being transferred in terms of logistics, weapons, men, movements, and everything. Egypt will try and be out of the situation up until the last second. And with the de-escalation in Gaza, that means de-escalation with Egypt. With escalation with Lebanon, that means escalation with Syria, or potential escalation with Syria, saying that Syria as a government, they're not interested in going on all that war. But what's happening in Syria is obviously all of this logistics support, all of the equipment, all of the weapons, all of the people, all of them go from Syria. That's well known. Obviously, some come from the sea as well. So Syria is more likely to get sucked in. But then again, you're talking other equations too, because you have Tartus, the port is run by Russia. You have Russian forces, boots on ground in Syria. You're talking about a different thing here. I don't think they would want to be pressing on the buttons of Russia in Syria. So it might be restricted to Lebanon, but again, you don't know how thick these people are running Israel now, so they could make mistakes that could be way more devastating. M. Cody Politics saying, if Iran acquires nukes, would a two-state be possible? Will Hamas hit from behind while IDF is busy with Hezbollah in the northern flank? Well, Iran is not interested in a two-state solution in Palestine. They always talk about annihilating Israel because it's a usurping aggressor planted entity. They call it a virus. They call it a cancer. So they're not interested in this two-state. They're interested in eliminating Israel. If they have nuclear weapons, look, even without nuclear weapons, they have deterrence. And will Hezbollah hit from behind if Israel is engaged with Lebanon? Well, Israel will be engaging with Lebanon based on the information that we have without completely ending what's happening in Gaza. So it would be through what Israel calls level C of the operation, because they've had A and B apparently, and C is supposed to be after eliminating Hamas, by the way, but they're living in denial, obviously. So they would pretend that they eliminated Hamas and they would target just anything that resembles Hamas, right, in their minds, obviously. So that would still be active because Benjamin Netanyahu is not deciding. Well, he signed apparently ceasefire deal, but he's not admitting that he signed it, and he's only saying that he admitted that he signed the first kind of part of this. So even if we have an intense attack on Lebanon, it will potentially continue with Hamas as well. Israel will be busy with them. Marvin Virgus, thank you, by the way, for your super thanks. You said false flag operation against the U.S. base. Oh, blame Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah. Oh, that's so on point. Absolutely possible. 100% possible. False flag operation against the U.S. base. That's very likely to justify some sort of U.S. interference. So 100%. You're already seeing false flags left, right, and center. Now this the Dagestan false flag. All of that to create... to disturb the social fabric in that region, right? And they call it Islamist movement, right? They're so comfortable and convenient in using the word Islamist when it comes to a rogue group supported by Western intelligence, but have a beard, But a country claiming to be Jewish, 24/7 butchering people with the Star of David, no, we're not sure. That's the situation here. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have false flag. They have lots of false flags. But even with the false flags now, everything's exposed. Do you know what I mean? Which ignorant fool believes them? You know, they might fool a couple of people, but I'm not sure how much a false flag would be a good idea, really. Because people are picking on everything now. People are picking on everything. Not just Gaza, everything. They're going back to 9/11, going back to all of the history now. They're like, if you're lying so blatantly now in front of our eyes, right, and you're saying the exact opposite of what's happening, then what did you say before? When we didn't have social media, when we didn't have this much information coming out, how much did you lie? And Stephen Burrows as well, thank you so much for your super thanks. And Zach, thank you for your membership and welcome. Let's see, what else did we have here? I missed a couple of questions, by the way, from the top. If you wouldn't mind repeating them, I think some of you sent a couple of things that disappeared now. Okay. Kate saying Pakistan said if Israel used nuclear, they will not hesitate to use nuclear on Israel. Do you think it's all lip service just like Erdogan? I actually haven't heard that really. Have they said that? I haven't really heard that Pakistan said that. But I mean, seeing as what they've done so far, I don't think so. I don't think so, unless they're attacked. Look, Israel has sensitivities when it comes to Pakistan, regardless of the government that's there, by the way. It has been reported that the previous Israeli head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan, used to say that my nightmare is Pakistan. Why is my nightmare Pakistan? Because it's a Muslim country that has a nuclear weapon, that has nuclear weapons. And he was worried about, someone hostile to Israel coming in power. But I'm not sure they said that report. If they did, I'm not sure how much of an effect it will have really on Israel. But again, if they use unconventional weapons in Israel, there will be a lot of trouble coming. Handrianiv is saying people are picking on everything except the Islamophobes and the Zionists. Absolutely. And they go hand in hand, by the way, Islamophobes and Zionists, by the way. You see, the argument that they come up with, the Zionists always, Islam. They start talking about Islam immediately, as if there is no political problem, as if they're not occupiers, as if they're not racist bigots, as if they're not a supremacist state, as if they're not an apartheid state. Delusional, I'm telling you. And typical deflection, by the way. Typical deflection. And it still works on some imbeciles to this day, unfortunately. However, more and more people are seeing it, are seeing the lies. Marvin Berg saying, question, with Israel losing Colombia as a coal supplier, who's filling the gap? Look, Israel is suffering on so many levels, by the way, and many things are not being reported. And unfortunately, the things we hear about some Arab states' support for Israel is shameful, Really, they're starving the people of Gaza to death. And there are reports that some Arab countries are filling the gap when it comes to exports on Israel to try and take down and limit the effect of Ansarullah on Israel's economy, which is devastating. It's devastating. And some of it is due to their own policies. Like Israel's losing $600 million a week just because they don't give Palestinians from the West Bank work permits to build in Israel. $600 million a week just because they don't want them to work. Just because, bigotry and racism. So, in terms of coal, look, many people would hesitate. Like, think about it this way. If Israel has shortage of certain weapons, like you'd think, why isn't another country stepping in? Well, why would they? It's a pariah state. It's a genocidal state, condemned by the International Court of Justice. Lip service, not lip service. Income paper, no income paper. It's there. They're a genocidal state by ruling, right? By the ICJ, arrest warrants about to be issued against the heads of the state. Who wants to deal with them? Gaza is saying, have you seen video of a fighter arriving in Lebanon from Iran and other places in the Middle East? They're entitled to get fighters from all across the world. Lebanon and Gaza, anyone who is suffering from this genocidal, reckless, neo-colonialist, expansionist state is entitled to bring whatever they need to protect themselves. If it's fighters, weapons, whatever, they're totally entitled. Why is it so bizarre? As in, they portray it as if it's, oh my God, they're great fight. They are entitled to bring 2 million fighters to come and fight with them. What's the problem? They're entitled to bring every weapon under the sun to protect themselves. By international law, not by MahmoodOD sitting here. International law gives them that right. Yet, these clowns in power, right, and their mainstream media, they try and portray it as if it's, haram, it's forbidden on these people, and it's halal, it's permissible for Israel, right? Israel, don't ask about anything. Even if they have nuclear weapons, don't ask. They're entitled, spoiled little bee child of the West. Don't ask anything. Only ask if it's Hamas or Hezbollah or the people suffering from this country. So to me, it's not even news. They are entitled to get whoever they want, at what level they need to protect themselves and to defend their nations from a country that commits a genocide and commits an infanticide, a country that commits mass murder, slaughter, starves children to death. They're entitled to protect themselves against this pariah state, whether it's with 1 million or 20 million fighters coming to Lebanon. And by the way, that we already saw some fighters in Lebanon from October. Iraqi fighters were in Lebanon and they were recording the Israeli army, as in we're here, if needs be. Jack Ayub saying the IDF wants to take the Lebanese resistance. They can't even handle Hamas. A 16-pound gorilla, and now they want to go and fight Godzilla. Good luck. Exactly. You want to go and fight Godzilla in Lebanon. Totally spot on. They have no chance. That's why they'll resort to all of this. All of these threats, all of this talk, right? This psychological warfare to cater for their pathetic population that still believes in this state, by the way, although most people no longer believe in them. Bizzer, thank you so much for your super thanks. I'm not going to mention all of the words, but was with it. Okay, we're finna see Palestine on some real. Yep, I hope so. But thank you so much for your super thanks, by the way. Omsi saying question with the Anglo-American genocide. I love that. The Anglo-American Genocide Alliance be able to disrupt Lebanon's supply lines? I don't think so. They haven't been able to disrupt Lebanon's supply lines. Lebanon's supply lines are over the ground, over the air, from the sea, and in tunnels, by the way. So there's no chance. If they haven't been able to stop supply lines, albeit limited to Gaza, that's besieged, how can they stop Lebanon? Excuse me, I'm still, by the way, under the weather here. And, how can they stop Lebanon? They can't. And like I said, the sooner they realize that this genocidal entity must end as an apartheid entity, and we need to establish one democratic state between the Jordan River to the sea, the merrier. But so far they're living in denial because they face the same problems that Zionist leaders face: the arrogance, the ignorance, the racism, the lack of reflection. They don't want to look back at history, like, for example, the British government. They don't want to look down at their dark history and how complicit they were in establishing this genocidal state with the Balfour Declaration. So they'll remain in denial up until they end, and then they act like nothing happened, right? Likewise with the US, but with the US, we're seeing some changes. We're seeing some changes, especially with the delays in shipments, with a certain leverage being used, with these statements that we won't help you with an all-out war. All of these things make a difference. Lizzie saying Hezbollah has tunnels to Israel. How deep do you think they go to Israel? Really, no one knows apart from them. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have tunnels reaching probably over 50 kilometers into Israel. That wouldn't surprise me. But again, only they know, because they have the capacity to dig in rocks, right? Israel previously revealed the tunnel, apparently. They have big capacities, Hezbollah. And by the way, you need to understand one thing as well. They got some of the technology from North Korea, the tunnel and how to dig tunnels, because they are known to have lots of tunnels in North Korea and even in China. So they learned methods, and North Korea passed information for them. So wouldn't be surprised if they have tunnels tens of kilometers into Israel. Marvin is saying, if I understand, Bibi gave more power to extremists to grab, attack Palestinians in the West Bank, and West Bankers resist these increased attacks of 550 killed. What can happen in the West Bank is obviously more discontent from people who serve in the Palestinian Authority, especially the forces, because some of them already deal with the resistance there, but they're seeing what's happening. And the armed resistance in the West Bank isn't going anywhere. As a matter of fact, I personally was surprised to how much they are capable in the West Bank. I personally was surprised. I didn't think Israel would face that much resistance in the West Bank. I didn't think that. Don't forget, Israel is in the West Bank. You have a West Bank Authority completely complicit with them. How are these people able to do that? In Jenin or Tul Karim, it's I don't know. I was surprised myself. But clearly, you know, when you oppress people so much, they become so creative in finding ways to attack you back and defend themselves. Jack Ayub saying, if I saw that kid that the IDF tied on the Jeep using as a human shield in the West Bank, yeah, of course. But that's not surprising to me. They are barbaric. They are barbaric things. Don't know what to call them, really. And do you know what they claimed afterwards, by the way? Oh, he asked us to evacuate him because he was injured. Right? The Israeli army said, this boy who was wounded, critically wounded, asked us to tie him, his body, on the front of our military jeep because he wanted us to help him out. Nothing surprising there. You're talking about the same people that slaughter infants, that kill newborns. What's surprising? They commit a genocide. There's nothing surprising about these people. What's surprising is the people who haven't yet seen them for what they are. Wendy is saying, what about Afghanistan now, saying that they will support Hezbollah? We left tons of military equipment there. Yeah, and that also went under the radar. The US going to a war on terror, the war on terror. George W. Bush used to call it, going on war on terror. Anyway, this war on terror, war on a term, it didn't end. They went to Taliban and they wanted to take down Taliban to bring democracy and support women's rights. Only to leave 20 years later and to bring Taliban back without changing anything, by the way, and take Taliban off the terror list. They're no longer terrorists. And they left them lots of weapons. Paid by who? By the US taxpayer. Wow. I'm not sure, though, how much. Look, they could help potentially Hezbollah if they need to. They already have movements that are aligned with them. They could help if they need the help. Marvin saying, would you be allowed to have a PIJ Hamas spokesperson on your stream? Love to see a discussion with them. I don't see why not. I mean, I saw multiple channels having discussions with representatives from Hamas. One of them was Channel 4, actually, in Britain. But they had a discussion with a Hamas representative from Iran, who had very good English, by the way. I didn't know him previously. So that could potentially happen. I don't see why it should be a problem, really, you know. At the end of the day, you know, doing your journalistic work here, right? No problem with that. You can interview a mass murderer and invite him to your country and not interview someone who defends his people. I'd find that bizarre. Teshikoma saying, what's the update with the ceasefire deal? The ceasefire deal is as follows. Benjamin Netanyahu is playing the tricks that he always plays to suit him. Clearly, Benjamin Netanyahu signed a deal with Hamas. signed a full deal with Hamas, but did not declare it. Because he didn't declare it, the Americans declared it, and the Israeli protesters declared it, and other people in Israel declared it. But he did not declare it. What he's saying is, so he wanted to go ahead with it without the declaration. What he did say is, there will be a partial deal. And he's already getting criticism because of this partial deal, by the way. What's this partial deal? We will agree on the first stage only. What's the first stage? The release of a few prisoners, a slight de-escalation, withdrawal from the highly populated areas. In a stage where Israel was supposed to already demolish Hamas and just, take off like growing seeds or whatever, as they call it. So that's what he's saying. Clearly, Hamas won't agree to that because Hamas want a full ceasefire. And it's getting nowhere. And Israel is the side delaying it. Because Benjamin Netanyahu will not agree on a full deal. He will only agree to the first stage only because he wants the ability to continue fighting and killing people. Kate, Egypt, where are their voice reaction? Should we just write them off? In terms of army, we said it from day one. Egypt will not interfere. And some people were like misinterpreting what I say about Egypt preventing the ethnic cleansing campaign, which is a separate story, to Egypt interfering with the war. They think like you're defending the position of the state as a whole. No, I'll say things as they are. They prevented the ethnic cleansing from happening. That's undeniable, by the way. Without Egypt taking that position, we would have seen a different situation in Gaza, and people need to remember that. But in terms of army, they wouldn't have interfered unless Egypt was attacked. Unless Egypt's territory, sovereignty, and security was attacked. Obviously, you can argue Israel is already a threat to the global security. Why don't they attack them? Valid, totally valid. But I'm talking about in the current situation under this current government, under the current president. They won't do anything else. So I don't think anything should be expected. Unless Israel makes a big mistake with them directly. Because they're ready for war with Israel. But not for the Palestinian people. Irene Z, where is the suicide regime getting their weaponry from? Didn't Ansarullah block all of the ports? Yeah, but you still have the airports. Obviously, they blocked the sea routes, but some of the airports, they obviously can still get missiles and weapons and what have you. And Mediterranean, they're probably not blocking all of it. James Thompson saying, Mahmoud, when the neoliberal party, formerly known as the Labour, win by default in July, do you think they'll fall at the feet of the Zionist entity, or do you think the public pressure will prevail? Labour is already infested with Zionism. Labour is rotten to the core, like Tories. They're infested by cancer and Zionism. You're talking about rogue parties. So they will still try and support Israel as much as possible. Starmer and all of his party. But the public pressure will change some of the actions that they take to an extent as well. And not all of the actions, by the way. Not all of the actions. Unless things escalate way more. When it comes to public pressure. I mean, don't undermine the public pressure, but clearly the public pressure in Britain isn't doing what the public pressure in other parts is doing. And that's not to undermine it, by the way. No one think that. Every public pressure is good. All of the activism is good. Everything is good. Everything you do, say, act is good. But you have a foreign minister, Clown Cameron. he's still saying he won't ban arms exports to Israel. How do you explain that? When even in the US you feel like some of the political figures are sensing more urgency. Other countries, they'll stop their exports. But that's obviously tied to the historical link the United Kingdom has with Israel. The UK doesn't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to admit, look, we were part of this problem. We need to apologize for the history and correct things. Instead, they'll dig their hands in the sand and support this supremacist, racist, genocidal entity, proving that the people who make these decisions are exactly like the Zionists. No difference. That's why we call them the genocide cartel. Some people outside of Israel are worse than Israel, by the way. People who support them, who have the capacity to support them and end their support and delegitimize them. So public pressure is very, very important. It will eventually prevail, in my opinion. I don't think Starmer, and if Labour would win by default, would change things dramatically when it comes to Israel. Starmer is a Zionist puppet. You're talking about a new Tony Blair, in a way. I mean, Tony Blair probably had a bit more of an ugly character, maybe, but they're both the same thing, very similar. So I don't think, the man is going to press for Israel until the end, Starmer. And that's why he's getting a chance at being the prime minister in the UK. If Starmer was anyone else, he would have been eliminated. You saw what happened with Corbyn. Witch hunt. Witch hunt, including by media that portrays itself as left, like The Guardian. They were falling into the same trap, this anti-Semitism garbage. The weaponization of anti-Semitism for criticizing Israel. Lies 24/7, portraying him as a devil in the Spun in the Daily Fail. But Starmer, because he's corrupt, he has a chance. You see, your role for the prime minister in the UK, corrupt, genocide supporting, anything, lack of personality, lack of everything good, shove him there, he'll become the prime minister. Anything good can't happen. Sherry Vandenberg is saying a couple of days ago it was reported that Macron is offering French help if Jaja, his goons and Lebanese armed forces take over the southern border, divide and rule, civil war invite. Your view? Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with Jaja, his name is Samir Jaja, the leader of the Lebanese forces group, a group that collaborated with Israel during their invasion in the 80s of Lebanon, committed massacres against Palestinian people, by the way, and took an ugly role in the civil war in Lebanon. Fantasies, Jaja and his crew, they know their limits. No one can mess with Hezbollah in Lebanon. What are we talking about? So if he has any ambitions or dreams, he knows how it will end. Trust me, Hezbollah is Lebanon in terms of power. Hezbollah runs the show in Lebanon. Everyone knows that. The government knows that. The army knows that. Everyone knows that. And why is that the case? It's because the Lebanese army itself proved previously that they can't protect Lebanon. Lebanon was invaded under the Lebanese army. Then they created the Southern Lebanese army, bound to Israel. And then they ran like rats to Israel when the South was liberated. What's going to do? And obviously Lebanon suffers from sectarianism. Lebanon is still has diseases, Lebanon, especially with politics, lots of sectarianism and divisions, like this prime minister needs to be this, the president needs to be that, foreign minister, all of that should end. You also need to have a real democracy representing the people in Lebanon, not a Shia prime minister, Sunni prime minister, Shia president, or leader of the parliament, Christian president. What is all of that nonsense? You need to have full democracy where people vote and choose whoever they want, but they still abide by these rules that split them. It's fascinating. But again, Hezbollah, they run the show. If Samir Ja'ja thinks he can do something with Hezbollah, he's delusional. And the French government wouldn't be able to mediate anyway, because Israel already refused their mediation. Why? Because they're not fully compliant with Israel. Gallant already said no, and then don't forget France banned their representatives from attending this arms exhibition in France, hundreds of people, and they've been more vocal against Israel, including some condemnations as well. So Israel won't be happy with France. They would be happy with Amos Hochstein, though. This is who they'd be happy with Amos Hochstein. Irene Z, hope the departure at their airport is packed now before an attack on Lebanon. They either hide in bunkers or fly off. Well, most of them have flown off. Trust me, the majority of them fled. Millions fled. Now they're publishing a stat now to mislead the people, saying 500,000 left. You hypocrite liars. In November, in mid-November, it was 1 million. Now you're telling me 500,000? So in November 2023, it was 2.2 million Israelis outside of Israel, including the 1.2 million who already permanently reside abroad, excluding descendants. Instead of saying, no, 1 more million left, they went back. Who? People in Israel are already saying, pack up and leave, we're done. Especially now that they're seeing the stone from the US. By the way, you need to read social media in Israel, view some accounts there, what the public feels, what they think. People know the US is giving up now. They're viewed as a pariah state. It's ending, that's it. So many more will fly off. Many have already fled. Many more will fly off. Not many will remain. Not many will remain. Zach is asking, what do you think about the possibility of seeing a resistance develop within Jordan? Not very likely, to be fair, because Jordan, it's a firm grip from the government, really. You might see people who are tied with the government who don't really do everything as the government wishes. But it's unlikely to have like a very coordinated armed resistance in Jordan. Donald Lawson, how do you think that legislation of annexing the West Bank will go? Bad, worse for the Palestinian people, because you're talking about a genocidal man having more control. So he will make life more miserable for people. And it could be for very basic things, by the way, like taking away more permits for nothing, removing more people from their houses more easily, let alone killing and abusing people left, right, and center, and land grabbing on the go. It's really, really bad. It's really bad. So we're not expecting it to be, but that's, again, all of it is temporary. All of it is temporary. And we'll finish it there. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me tonight. Special thanks to everyone who sent super thanks. And I'm sorry if I missed some of you, by the way. Marvin, again, Steve, Stephen, Bizr, Hassan, Mariam Al-Husseini and Free Palestine. Thank you so much. Hassan also said, I'm sorry I missed that, by the way. Do you think that when Israel stopped the war in Rafah, the Hizb will stop? And how real do you think they will be a big war in Lebanon? Well, Hezbollah told them, once you stop the genocide in Gaza, stop it, not temporary halt and continue. Stop it, withdraw, leave. Houthis, Ansarullah said, stop and lift the siege. But even with Lebanon, they told them, Israel told them, responded and said, even if we stop with Gaza, we won't stop with you. So it's as if they are giving them like a free hand or like an exemption. Look, if you want to continue, continue. How real do you think there will be a big war in Lebanon? 50-50. And I think I'm inclined, if I would have my expectation, I'd say I think Israel would potentially do something big but limited, as in much more significant than what they've done so far, but limited, just to show that we've done something. Like their philosophy in Gaza. What's their philosophy in Gaza? Say that you're attacking a place, claim afterwards, or unilaterally claim victory, unilaterally say we diminished 20 brigades, and, convince yourself, feed the delusion for yourself and your population, and continue. I would expect something similar with Lebanon. But what they wouldn't expect is what Hezbollah will retaliate. Again, unless they go completely mental and use unconventional weapons. And all of that will hasten their demise, by the way. So there is potential. And Mariam, thank you for your super thanks as well. And Free Palestine is telling me, Assalamu alaikum, inshallah, Hassan halta qariban akhi. Thank you so much, my brother, wishing me good health. And I wish you all the best, Habibi. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who participated. Again, sorry if I missed some of the comments. Like I said before, all of the live chat keeps going up and down. But lovely to be with you as always. Thank you so much for being with me. I have a couple of videos published, so you can go ahead and watch them. Apart from that, I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow night. If not with a live stream, with a video, but I'll do my best to have a live stream too, and you'll see it published as well. Much love to all of you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week and stay safe. Salam, everyone. Peace.